Story time of the most toxic, gaslighting, narcissistic, manipulative, lying, cheating thing an ex has ever done to me.
He tells me I am the one with the problem because I should be more understanding of how good looking he is, and I should be more accepting and forgiving of all the women that are attracted to him.
A gaslighter will break your trust and then convince you that your mistrust is the real problem.
High-achieving women get gaslit by narcissistic partners because gaslighting works better on people who are competent, self-reflective, and willing to self-correct.
Have you ever told a man how much he hurt your feelings, and by the end of that conversation, you were the one apologizing? Have you ever confronted a man about something he clearly did, and at the end of the day, he turns out to tell you, oh, you're just imagining things, or you're too sensitive, that never happened, or you're crazy, or perhaps he tells you, oh, it was just a joke, you can't take a joke. And then instead of discussing what he did, you end up defending your own sanity and in a lot of cases apologizing to him. Something very interesting about manipulators is sometimes they necessarily do not need to prove that they are right. All they need to accomplish is make you doubt yourself.
So let's share a time when we were gaslit by a narcissist. I'll go first. So this is like 13 years ago. I was engaged to this guy. We'd been together almost 3 years. It was like 2.5 years. And we both had our houses on the market to sell. We were going to buy a really big house together for him and our boys and have this like great magical life. Well, he decides to tell me that he has decided that it is his obligation to date other women because he's so good looking. He feels bad telling them no. And he thinks he should at least date them so that they don't feel like they're missing out on dating a good looking guy. What? So anyway, as I'm processing this and him telling me that I need to be okay with him having other girlfriends because he's just so attractive, he can't keep them all away, literally what he said, I'm now plotting my escape. I've called my realtor and told him to take my house off the market, and I'm trying to figure my life out as I'm also trying to process this mindset of this person. And so he comes to me one day and is like, there's this girl at work that wants to go out with me, but don't worry, you're coming. She knows we're engaged, but I do want you to meet her. She's really cool. And, but you're coming with us. And I was like, okay. We go on a date. He has me sit in the back seat. They talk the whole time. He doesn't even like acknowledge my existence, and her and I get to chit-chatting and we actually get along, and he actually got jealous about it and got pissy when we were at dinner. He was like, well, you guys seem to be getting along. I guess I can just leave. And he got all upset. So anyway, after the date, I'm like, we're good. Thank you. Here's your ring back. This is lame. He tried to guilt me into feeling bad and tried to tell me that I was the issue and that I was jealous of all the other women because they get to date him without having to put in the work to be married, and that I was trying to sabotage his friendships out of jealousy. And now that I'm saying this, I'm like, wow, this happened. This actually happened. But then he tells me that I'm the one with the problem because I should be more understanding of how good looking he is, and I should be more accepting and forgiving of all the women that are attracted to him. Needless to say, we were no longer speaking the following week.
Story time of the most toxic, gaslighting, narcissistic, manipulative, lying, cheating thing an ex has ever done to me. I was with this guy for about a year at the time, and he'd been emotionally abusive for our whole relationship. One thing he used to do to me is he would stop talking to me for days on end if I did something so much as smile at the wrong time during a conversation. This guy was fucking insane. We were chatting one day about doing a beach trip, and I was looking at the calendar and I was like, oh my god, there's a long weekend coming up. Maybe we could go and do a beach trip on that weekend. This guy had lived overseas for 3 years of his life. I'm going to say in the US. Anyway, he started getting really weird about this particular weekend. He was like, oh no, like I've got a friend possibly visiting me from the US on that weekend, so like I can't do that weekend. I've got to keep it free. I was like, okay, who's the friend? And he goes, her name's Sarah. I said, Sarah? That's a pretty name. How do you know Sarah? Keep in mind that this guy had told me that he hadn't had a girlfriend since he was in high school. He was now 27 years old. I always found that a bit weird, but that's what he told me. And I dug a little bit deeper into who Sarah was. Turns out he had dated her, but it didn't count because it was very brief, and that's why he didn't tell me. Time goes on, I don't hear about this Sarah chick again, and I kind of forget about it. A few weeks later, he out of the blue stopped speaking to me. I can't for the life of me work out what I've done, as per usual. And normally my response to this sort of behavior idea would be that I would pander to him. I would just do everything in my power to try and make things right between us again. But on this particular occasion, I was like, I'm going to do an experiment. I'm going to not talk back to him and just see how long it takes him to say something to me. So anyway, he stopped speaking to me on the Monday. By Friday, we had not exchanged a single word to each other. We lived with each other in the same house. Can you imagine that? Friday morning, as I'm walking out the door to work, as I'm literally walking out the door, he goes, Amy, we need to talk. And I said, yeah, we do need to talk, but not now though, because I'm going to be late for work. And he said, I can't handle this anymore. I'm going to go away for the weekend to Sydney. I cried all the way to work and just prayed that he would change his mind and stay. At the time, we had each other on Find My Friends, which is basically an app where you can see each other's locations. Next 24 hours were agonizing. I basically watched his location and tracked his every move as he moved from bar to bar and then stayed at some random location overnight, which appeared to be an Airbnb. My sister lived in Sydney and I was keeping her fully updated with everything that was going on. Also keep in mind that I did try to call my boyfriend a couple of times, which he just rejected my calls. Next morning, I get a call from my sister and she's like, you will not believe who just called me. My ex-boyfriend had called her and he'd asked to meet up with her for coffee that morning. I was like, what the fuck is going on? What could he possibly want to talk to you about? So I was like, you have to go. You have to go. You have to report back and tell me every single thing that he says. Sister agrees and they meet for coffee. My ex-boyfriend claims that the meeting was to basically save our relationship. He wanted to talk to somebody close to me so that he could get advice on how to manage me because I was so psychotic. Basically ranted to her for an hour about how mentally ill I am and how challenging our relationship is and how much he struggles with our relationship because I'm so hard to manage. I'm basically just beyond saving. My sister calls me afterwards and this is how good he is. This is how manipulative he is. My sister kind of believes him. She was like, Amy, listen, he sounded really sincere. Like, my sister sat and thought for a second and then she was like, actually, you're right. He never asked me for any advice. He literally just spoke shit about you for the entire hour. He finally gets home. He walks through the door. I'm sitting at the kitchen table sobbing. I was like, what the fuck is going on? Why did you stop speaking to me in the first place? Why did you go to Sydney? What was with meeting up with my sister? Like, I need answers here. Basically, he goes on to tell me that he'd gone through my phone and he'd found messages that incriminated me. I knew for a fact that I had no messages on my phone that were incriminating because I was so in love with him that I would never even consider cheating on him or saying anything bad about him. And he said that I had deleted the message thread. Pulled up the message and I said, no, I haven't deleted the message thread. I only have one message with this guy because I don't work directly with him and I've only ever had to message him once in my life, which was like a couple of weeks ago. He didn't have a lot to say to that. That was the one reason why he'd stopped speaking to me for an entire week and then went down to Sydney. After I had this information, I started thinking more about it and I realized that this was the weekend that Sarah was meant to be in town. And I started wondering, did his Sydney trip have less to do with my apparent incriminating messages and more to do with a visit to an ex-girlfriend? I'd never gone through his phone before this, but in this circumstance, not only had he been through my phone, but I also had reason to believe that he was definitely lying to me. So that night when he went to sleep, I got onto his phone and I read the messages from Sarah. Turns out they had been messaging our entire relationship. Not only that, they spent hours on the phone to each other every single week. The messages were also super flirty and extremely inappropriate. He told her that he wanted to sweep her off her feet, that she was the only one for him, yada, yada, yada. You get the gist. Oh, and yeah, he'd stayed with her that night. Not one of his guy mates. After I'd gathered all of the evidence, I woke him up and confronted him with the messages. When I held up his phone with the messages on them, he went green. Like, I've never seen a human being turn green before. He was this color. I swear to God. He's clearly caught out in the biggest lie ever. And his response was, well, what did you expect, Amy? The relationship was over anyway. Eventually, he lets me back inside. We talk it out. He convinces me that I must be insane to think that he's done anything with Sarah. Literally convinces me that nothing happened, and I start questioning my own sanity. He was really good. And I ended up getting back with him and staying with him for several months until he started physically abusing me. at which point I ended the relationship.
Now let's look at the word gaslighting. Where does the word come from? The word gaslighting comes from a 1938 stage play by Patrick Hamilton. Now, the story was later adapted into films, including the famous 1944 movie called Gaslight. In the story, a husband deliberately manipulates his wife into thinking she was being delusional, and one of the ways he does this is by manipulating the gaslighting in their home. She notices the lights changing, asks him, and he denies it. And this continued and somehow made her start questioning her own perception of reality. So this was where the word gaslight came from. The husband kept on denying her reality and she kept on believing him. And with time, she began to question her own perception of reality. Now, adapting this to our present time and day, it shows up in how people manipulate text messages, delete messages, change stories, claim that you misunderstood them, tell you some conversations never happened, tell you that you're remembering things incorrectly, or show you tiny pieces of information while hiding the rest of the conversation. And now we have smartphones, screenshots, social media, location sharing, surveillance technology, and all of this. So manipulation and gaslighting has not actually changed. It has only acquired new tools and changed tactics.
How do I respond to my husband when he demands submission?
What?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
I guess a little background, I guess. We've been married for almost 3 years. And since we've gotten married, he's often used the Bible verses about wives submit to your husbands and everything to end our arguments. My faith is really important to me, so it feels like a trump card has been played when he does this, and I just shut down.
Give me an example.
So recently, I guess I brought up my need for a bit more contribution around the house, and this devolved into an hours-long argument where he ended up reading these verses to me off of his phone.
Oh my gosh.
And I don't know what else to do.
So you said, hey, and by the way, let's take away the word need. I think that's a way we can drown each other. You
Sure.
said, hey, I want some help.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, like, do you have kids? I mean, what kind of help do you need? Or do you want?
No kids.
Okay.
No kids, but that is another reason why I'm calling. That's definitely a hot topic at the moment. But I kind of feel like I do a bit more than my fair share, I guess. Well, he's playing video games, and so I say, hey, can you vacuum or can you take out the trash? And the argument will devolve into, well, you can quit your job and then you won't have anything to complain about anymore. And then as arguments continue,
Is this guy, is this for real? This is a real dude?
Yes.
He pauses his video game to look over his shoulder at you and then grabs his phone and reads Bible verses about how you should submit to him?
Yeah, and sometimes the video game isn't even paused.
There was a big infidelity in New York that took me 10 years to heal from.
I was held at gunpoint with my own gun and watched the mistresses I was living with at that time killed in front of me, which she had to bear that burden too. We lost our home to arson.
Our home was burned down.
Then an innocent person was killed rushing to the fire of our house burning down because of our mess.
I think what bothers me the most about what he's saying and how he's saying it is his lack of accountability. He acts as if all these things happened to him, as if he didn't make these decisions that resulted in these things, cause and effect.
My first husband didn't like me very much. He did marry me. I don't know, but the way he treated me, he clearly didn't like me very much. You know how somebody will do something that you don't understand, and even when they explain it to you, you don't know what they're talking about. And so then you think about it like maybe once a month for 30 years, and then something happens and it just clicks and you're like, oh my gosh, that's what it was about. His sister had made all these cookies and we lived in a different state. She ships us these homemade cookies and they're not very good. And he agrees that they're not very good. For like a week or two, he's like, do you want a cookie? Do you want a cookie? Why don't you have a cookie? And I was getting really sick of him asking me if I wanted a cookie. So he wouldn't shut up about us needing to eat these gross cookies. And so I'm like Just tell her we ate them. Tell her they were good. We like them. We ate them. It's not that big of a deal. You lie to me about crap like that all the time. And he said, yeah, but she's my sister. I'm like, what? And he's like, she's family. It's different. I'm like, I'm your wife. I'm family. He's like, you're not family. I was stunned. I was like, I am your family. I'm married to you. I'm your wife. That makes me family. He goes, no, it doesn't. I'm like, what are you talking about? It definitely does. And he's like, no. He goes, the only people that can be family is people that you're related to by blood. And I'm like, who told you that? And he goes, my mom and dad. And I was like, are you kidding me? And he's just like, yeah. I said, but is your mom and dad family? And he goes, well, yeah. And I was like, well, okay. How is that possible? Because they're married. He's like, yeah, but they've been married for a really long time and they have kids together and blah, blah, blah. It's just different. And I was like, I don't think it is different. And I was like, this is really upsetting that you don't consider me family. And he goes, well, I don't know what to tell you. And he goes, you're my wife, but you're not my family. It really hurt my feelings.
Just weeks after my ex cancelled our wedding, he and his family tried to gaslight me into continuing paying for his rent and looking after him. They complained to everybody that it was very unchristian-like of me to stop paying for his rent and looking after him just because he had cancelled our wedding. They even came for my mum to make sure he wasn't solely dependent on me. My mum took it upon herself to put money in his account. And so when we broke up, she stopped doing that. But not only because we broke up, he had also just started working.
About what is and isn't Christian-like, the Bible says if a man doesn't work, he doesn't eat. And the very first thing God ever gave Adam was a job. So if you're going to talk about the Bible, don't just quote the scriptures that you like. As my mother once told me, what you compromise to get, you must compromise to keep. You started off compromising. You started off giving him money and your mom giving him money. And now he thinks that's how it's always supposed to go. Y'all got to pay me to be here, even if I'm not with her. This is what they mean when they say they want a woman to build with. What they mean is build me up. Help me to get to where I want to be. You guys already helped him with the rent. And now he's got a job. And he's like, I need y'all to continue to sustain me a little bit longer so that I can be a catch for the women that I really want.
Some men still hold the notion that they are the head of the house, so they own the rights to the woman. For a very long time, society has taught women that her husband is the head of the house, her husband owns her body, and obedience is part of being a good wife. So when the husband becomes controlling, where exactly does she draw the line? So I think manipulation has thrived for so long because of our society and some cultural beliefs that we hold. The notion that socially men are expected to hold most of the authority than women in homes. This is how they take advantage of women. This is how they take advantage of their wives. For centuries, legal systems in the US and in English laws often treated marriage as implying a woman's consent to sex. In other words, consent was actually not a thing for a wife. So narrowing this down to modern day, a woman simply telling her husband, oh, I don't want you going through my phone. The man responds, oh, what are you hiding? So a good woman doesn't hide things from her husband. We see the manipulation there. These are ways men manipulate women in modern times and gaslight you into believing things that were never even there. It's simply an assumption by men that it is their right to manipulate women. They still exert that right of ownership of women. Personally, I think men actually do this in a bid to escape accountability. So a man cheats on his partner and instead of taking all the blame, he apportions some blame to the woman. And women being socialized to believe that it is the job of a woman to hold the family together. Anything that happens in the home, it is your job to bind things together and keep the marriage working. In a bid to keep their marriage working, women take up the blame. So many women tend to take blame for their partner's misconduct.
So here's just a few signs that you could be in an abusive relationship. You don't have to hit someone to be abusing them. There is such thing as mental abuse, and it's overlooked a lot of the time because the scars are beneath the skin. So the first one is your partner creating an argument and then blaming you for your reaction? Because if that's what's happening, that is gaslighting. Is your partner then twisting it to make you think that you're the one to blame? That is a powerful tool that they use to manipulate you into thinking that you're the one that's in the wrong, not them. Is your partner then threatening to harm themselves if you leave? If that's so, that's called coercive control, which is against the law. It carries a jail sentence because of the seriousness of doing that to the person that's being abused. If you were going through any of these, the most powerful tool you have is your mouth. Speak out. to someone where you feel safe to do so.
My abusive ex-husband absolutely hated my parents. He isolated me from them. He tried to stop me speaking to them. He accused them of racism. He accused them of horrific things. And yet, when I left the abusive relationship, he went crawling to them, trying to get them to persuade me to go back to him. I'm Rosie and I'm a survivor of domestic abuse, and I'm trying to get in the TikTok Creator Fund so I can use TikTok to raise and donate as much money as I possibly can to Refuge. When I was with my ex, he did not like my parents. He didn't like the fact that they had some level of what he perceived to be control over me. So he tried to stop me talking to them. If I did speak to them on the phone, then he would try and find out what I was saying to them. He'd listen in. He said I was immature because I wanted to speak to my parents, or every time that we fell out, I would go to my parents. And he just made me feel like I couldn't speak to them. And then when I left, within a few days, he'd started messaging my parents. To my mum, he said that if I was to go back to him, or at least stay living in the area where he lived, then he would pay for all my childcare fees, and he would make sure that me and my child were well looked after. Then my dad, he messaged him and he said that he'd never cheated on me and that I was accusing him of these things, but nothing was true. He was just trying to make me see his way of things.
We're getting it wrong when we talk about how abusers isolate their victims. We are taught to look for the most overt sign, which is control. Them saying things like, I don't want you to hang out with this group of people, they're not good for you. But in reality, it can look a lot different. So here are 9 ways that abusers can isolate you. They might monopolize your time. My own abuser wanted to spend more and more and more time together until one day I woke up and realized that 95% of my free time was spent with him, and my other relationships were suffering as a result of that. They may sow seeds of discontent between you and your friends, highlighting flaws that your friends have, because we are all human, in order to facilitate or foster conflict or a sense of distrust. You know, things like, oh wow, you're really good friends to Samantha. I can't believe that she forgot your birthday. I wouldn't really tolerate that if I was you. Or they might even outright lie, saying things like, I was at a party and overheard Samantha and she said this thing about you. They may use guilt tripping to get you to cancel your own plans. They might say, oh, really? You're going to hang out with Billy tonight? I was hoping that you'd stay in tonight. I've just been having such a hard time and I could really use your support. Or, oh, really? You booked a guy's trip? I got us tickets to your favorite concert though, so I guess we won't go. They may pretend to love your friends, but magically, every time you're about to go hang out with them, about an hour before you leave, they pick a fight. And so that you either cancel the plans because you're still fighting, or if you do go, you leave early because you're just not feeling it and you're not in the mood. They may rely on you to self-isolate as a consequence of other forms of abuse. They may give you a black eye and suddenly you're canceling plans, or you're lying to a friend about why you need to pull out of their wedding as a bridesmaid because the makeup won't hide the bruises and the cuts. They may isolate you through exhaustion. Abusive relationships are incredibly taxing. Oftentimes people lose sleep. They've got, dysregulated nervous systems that manifest themselves in all kinds of other issues that even result in chronic illness. And so you might not have the energy to give any bandwidth to any other relationships because you're so busy just trying to regulate and keep the relationship on track, even though that's not possible. They may lower your self-esteem, saying disparaging things about you, or that nobody really likes you and that you're lucky that they tolerate you. And so you then question whether or not everyone else sees you in a negative light as well. And so you're less likely to want to accept social invitations to things because you think that everybody thinks the same way that your abuser does. And lastly, they may rely on other people to isolate you. As the relationship is circling the drain, they might be working on their exit strategy and their smear campaign early and planting stories that are untrue or exaggerated about your behavior in the relationship.
According to the CDC, they found that 18.6% of women reported an intimate partner keeping track of them by demanding to know where they were and what they were doing. 16% reported a partner trying to keep them from talking or seeing their family and friends. And 15.2% reported a partner making decisions for them that should have been theirs to make. Now that goes beyond jealousy. That's blatant control. So this goes beyond just social media rants and stories. This is actually real life stories. And this is not just an American problem. We may look at the data and say, oh, it's just an American problem. Trust me, this is worldwide. Now, the World Health Organization reported in 2025 that nearly 840 million women globally, almost 1 in 3 women from ages 15 and above, have experienced partner or sexual violence in their lifetime. And approximately 316 million women experienced physical and sexual intimate partner violence in the previous 12 months alone. And the United States has reported that intimate partners are responsible for a large proportion of violence against women. Now, obviously, gaslighting does not just automatically lead to murder. But these statistics show us something very important about intimate relationships. Control and violence are not isolated social problems, and that we should not pretend that controlling an individual is harmless. Being controlling is just a process. Manipulation, gaslighting, all follow a process, and eventually it becomes harmful.
These niggas will gaslight you to the point where you don't want to fucking live anymore. All while you're in the relationship with them, they gonna hit you with everything under the book. They gonna tell you that you're insecure. They're gonna tell you that you're fat, you're overweight. They're gonna tell you that you're too nice. They're all these things. That's actually what makes you a dope ass person, right? Because let's be real, most men in society like bigger women for some reason. Most men in society like the friendly feminine energy. You know, all the things that they're telling you, oh, you're too much, it's just too much for me, you're just doing a lot. Those are the exact same motherfucking things that makes you beautiful, that makes you the queen that you are. Of course they're gonna sit there and gaslight the shit out of you, because the lower your self-esteem goes, the more that you're gonna put up with their bullshit. So they're going to hit you in the exact areas that would make anybody feel some type of way. So then when y'all get in those moments of isolation, when y'all get in those arguments, when y'all get in those disagreements, you're not automatically thinking to yourself, oh, it's this motherfucker doing something to me, they're the reason why I feel like this. The first thing that pops up into your head is all the bullshit that they just got finished telling you. So now all of a sudden you're replaying the thoughts of what they've said out loud, but you're interpreting it as your own train of thought. So you're thinking that you are actually insecure, you're thinking you actually are ugly, you're thinking all that this other crazy shit.
Manipulation isn't something that you're able to spot quickly because it's not always obvious. Sometimes manipulation manifests itself as guilt, confusion, and you feeling the constant urge to always make peace. A man doesn't have to shout to shrink a woman. He just has to get her to explain herself over and over and over. So here are a few things that men do when they shrink women and keep them small. He will exploit your empathy. Whenever you set boundaries to a man who's trying to exploit your empathy, he's going to perceive those boundaries as cruel, and he's going to perceive your tiredness as negligence. And that is because when you set boundaries for yourself, he is now losing a sense of control that makes him feel safe. You've now become unpredictable, and he doesn't really know what to do with that. When you start pulling away, he might act like he's hurt because that control is a safety measure to him. So now he'll start dumping all of his discomfort onto you, hoping that you'll clean it up. And if you are an empath, chances are you might feel bad for that and you might clean it up. The solution: don't fix the guilt right away. Pause and reflect on it and ask yourself, who benefits from my discomfort? It certainly isn't you. In most cases, guilt is not an indicator to fix anything. It's usually a sign that someone has now used your empathy against you, and now they're holding it above you as leverage. This next one I like to call performative remorse. It is when a man will apologize in the nicest way to you. He'll say the most poetic things to you and everything sounds perfect, but he never has any sort of fundamental change within him. He'll use his false charisma and his fake charm to make you forget about everything that he did. And once you forget about everything that he did, it all resets and it goes back to zero.
High-achieving women get gaslit by narcissistic partners because gaslighting works better on people who are competent, self-reflective, and willing to self-correct. It sounds counterintuitive, but there are specific reasons highly intelligent women stay in the research loop longer. Dr. George Simon, who specializes in manipulative personalities, explains that manipulators target high-resource individuals, people with mental real estate, intelligence, perspective, emotional range, and leadership. It's your intelligence that gives you the ability to see 10 different explanations for bad behavior. Childhood trauma, stress, attachment wounds, pressure at work. But without realizing it, that same intelligence starts rationalizing away your intuition.
Now, sometimes those qualities that make you a wonderful, amazing person are those traits that can be easily exploited by a manipulative person. Traits like being empathetic, patient, forgiving, too nice, understanding, loyal, the desire to see the best in people. These are traits that open you up for manipulation because you're going to keep on seeing the good in that person Who's just deliberately plotting ways to manipulate you? Who's going to use those kind and beautiful, nice traits in you as weapons against you? Because anytime he does something to you, you're going to make up excuses for him to excuse those behaviors. Excuses like maybe he doesn't know how to communicate. Maybe if you love him better, he's going to love you back and all. But manipulative people do not think that way. They choose their victims deliberately, and they go for women that are harmless, that are empaths, that they know can be easily coerced and, bent and controlled. So empathy without boundaries can be very dangerous to you as a woman. Now, you see, isolation is one of the oldest tricks in the book. Anytime a man is trying to isolate you from your friends, from your family, from things you love doing, such a man is a big red flag. Like, he starts slowly. Oh, I don't like your friend. Or why do you tell her everything about you? Why do you listen to your friend's opinion? Oh, you hang out so much with your friends. You don't give me enough time. Your friends are bad. That's how it starts. Gradually, he influences her to stop talking to her friends, and then her sister, and then her family. He does this until you have fewer people around you who can point out his BS to call you back to reality. And this is why the CDC's data on coercive control is very significant. Trying to prevent women from seeing or communicating with family and friends is one of the documented forms of coercive control. Because once someone is isolated, manipulation becomes easier. And this is why you should learn to trust yourself. It's a process. It's a process, because if you've not learned to trust yourself, you're going to fall for anything. You're going to fall for a person who's trying to manipulate you, who's trying to gaslight you. If you've not learned to trust your own instincts, if you've not learned to trust your perception of things, you're going to fall for anything. You have to fact check everything that a man is telling you. And sometimes they do a counter attack. They add more people into the picture and tell you that's why your friends, that's why Jane told me you were crazy, and convince you that you're just making up things. You're crazy. So be careful with people that are manipulative, because they can go any length to make you feel like a fool, to convince you that you're crazy, to manipulate you into thinking whatever they want. I think this is a very important message for women. A man can love you and still treat you badly. A person can have feelings for you and still be emotionally abusive. Someone can be attached to you and still want control over you. Love is not the only variable in a relationship. Respect matters. Autonomy matters. Boundaries matter. Safety matters. And consent matters. So the most important question is not, does he love me? The question is, how does he react when I tell him no? Because anybody can be wonderful when you're doing exactly what they want. The question is, how does he react when you're not doing what he wants? How does he react when you disagree? What happens when you become more independent? What happens when you earn more money? What happens when you want to be around your friends more? What happens when you say no to sex? What happens when you criticize him or refuse to obey him? Does he respect you or does he punish you? These are things we should have at the back of our minds when dealing with men. We should be able to know the difference between conflicts and manipulation. And we've come to the end of this video. Thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like, don't forget to leave your thoughts down below in the comment section, and don't forget to share to anyone you think might be interested in watching this video. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so you get notified once I drop a video. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for your support, and I'll see you in my next video. Have a blessed day. Bye.